Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. The Kremlin has confirmed that US President Donald Trump will hold talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin tomorrow. The conversation will take place by phone, with both leaders set to discuss the proposed 30-day ceasefire agreement and steps towards lasting peace in Ukraine. The standoff between the United States and the Houthis continues as the US launches fresh strikes on Yemen, which kills 54. This comes in response to Houthi threats against international shipping routes through the Red Sea. Germany pledges an additional €300 million in aid to Syria through the United Nations. This comes during an EU-led conference aimed at supporting the country. The funds will provide food, healthcare services and emergency shelters. The United States deports hundreds of Venezuelan immigrants despite a federal judge's court order to halt the removals. The Trump administration argues that the court has no authority over the president's use of wartime powers. The deportees arrived in El Salvador in chains and were immediately sent to detention. The Trump administration announces further government layoffs, this time targeting the government-funded Voice of America. Donald Trump places nearly all employees at the network on immediate leave. An email from the government states that contractors must cease work immediately. Deadly storms sweep across the southern United States, leaving at least 40 people dead. Reports confirm 32 of the 34 storms are tornadoes, with wildfires also reported, and hundreds of thousands remain without power. NASA and SpaceX crew successfully dock at the International Space Station, preparing astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore for their return home after 9 months in space. US-based fashion brand Forever 21 files for bankruptcy protection for a second time. The company states that its stores and website in the US remain open as it begins the process of winding down. We start off with US President Donald Trump is set to speak at Russian President Vladimir Putin today as he pushes for the end to the war in Ukraine after positive talks between American and Russian officials in Moscow. Trump also stated that his conversation with Putin would include talking about the division of assets like land and power plants between Russia and Ukraine to end the conflict. Trump is trying to win Putin's support for a 30-day ceasefire proposal that Ukraine accepted last week. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov did confirm that Putin would speak to Trump by phone. Ukraine's President Zelensky has said that he sees a good chance to end the war after Ukraine accepted a 30-day ceasefire proposal from the US. However, Zelensky made it clear that Ukraine's sovereignty is non-negotiable and Russia must give back the territory it has taken. Russia demands ironclad guarantees in any peace deal, including that Ukraine stay out of NATO and remain neutral. Let's take a listen to what Trump had to say.
Yeah, we learned a lot. We're doing pretty well, I think, with Russia. We'll see if we have something to announce maybe by Tuesday. I'll be speaking to President Putin on Tuesday. And a lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance.
We are now joined by Dr. Vasilin Ivanov-Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean, Jindal Global Laws School, located in New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. I want to talk about these demands from Putin, first of all. He has demanded that Ukraine stay out of NATO. He's demanded that there is going to be no peace, European peacekeepers in Ukraine. He's also demanded concessions, land concessions in particular, from Ukraine. Is this really is this laying groundwork for lasting peace here with these Russian demands?
Well, definitely not, because Ukraine accepted unconditionally the proposal of 30-day ceasefire. So any condition that Putin makes from now on will be seen as a delay, and it will not please President Trump. He wants to report quick success. He promised to finish the conflict in 24 hours. It didn't happen. Now it's 2 months since his presidency. And for him, this is a very good chance to succeed in 30-day ceasefire, somehow to present that as a big peace deal, which obviously it is not, because ceasefire is very different from a long-term peace deal. So any questions about membership in NATO, it's a long-term. If I'm Zelensky, I will say, yes, I will not become member of NATO this year, 2025. And then what? Long-term, Ukraine will continue to insist to security guarantees and to membership in European Union, first and foremost, and possibly NATO later as well. In terms of the assets, which President Trump also mentioned, and here is something important, which is Zaporozhye, the biggest nuclear power station, which currently is in Russian hands. And even the fact that that nuclear power plant will be discussed is possibly also good news for Ukraine, because if it is currently in Russian hands, the only two outcomes could be either it stays in Russian hands as it is now, or the negotiation goes to be returned to the Ukrainian hands, because it's a major producer, the biggest, by the way, nuclear power point station in Europe. And that will also be interesting to see tomorrow what happened with the Zaporozhye nuclear station.
Dr. Veselin, I was wondering, what security guarantees do you think that Ukraine can get out of this deal? Let's say Russia, no NATO membership, no European peacekeepers. How can Ukraine be assured that Russia isn't just going to invade them again?
Then a possibility will be a separate treaty, a convention between Ukraine and NATO, applying Article 5 of NATO's guarantees, effectively saying that if Russia invades Ukraine again, NATO will stand with Ukraine. Well, they do stand with Ukraine already over the last 3 years by full political and diplomatic support, by supplying plenty of ammunition and weapons to Ukraine, by pressuring Russia with a lot of sanctions. So basically the security guarantee that Zelensky demanded are very similar to what already happened over the last 3 years. Those need to continue. I guess also one condition that Putin mentioned is who is going to monitor the 30-day ceasefire. And here something which United States and Donald Trump can do is to offer the surveillance, the intelligence from the sky to monitor any shooting between the two sides to guarantee the ceasefire. Again, guarantee of ceasefire is different from long-term security guarantee for Ukraine. If the 30-day ceasefire has a firm guarantee from United States to monitor big troops movement, for example, or to some attack by drones on another, those violations can be recorded, and definitely US can do a lot of monitoring on that.
I wanted to now go into the kind of style that Trump has approached this. He is obviously, these two, Trump and Putin, are going to be talking man to man over a direct conversation over the phone between these two adversaries. What do you make of this style? What do you make of the kind of Trump putting out things on his Truth social media directly after these very, very, very important things happen? What do you make of this kind of new style of diplomacy?
It's a very irony and paradox here, because a very important matter globally is discussed by two men who have a totally distorted picture of the world, historically, ideologically. One of them considered Russia to be an imperial 19th century power, and he wants to return that, not only Soviet Union, but even the previous great Russia. And the other one is talking similarly ridiculously about making America great again, which is obviously an ideological and nonsensical force. So two men who have so much irrationality in their thing. They don't understand the world, they don't understand the rules. Even if they agree on something today, they will disagree tomorrow, lie after lie. So it's really useless for them to talk. I'll put it this way. And for that matter, I don't expect much to happen tomorrow. It will be probably another comedy show, but they would like to present it as a success. Trump will go and say, I achieve a big deal, a big peace with only 30-day ceasefire. Trump always like that. He wants to change every narrative every day in order to be on the first page of the news. And he's on the first page of the news exactly because he says different things every week. He changes his mind, he flies from one side to another side, and that creates his popularity because there is always a scandal behind everything he says. Half of these are complete lies, the other half are semi-lies. And on Putin, he cannot be trusted on anything. Even if those two tomorrow sign an agreement with their signature, that paper will mean nothing, zero, because they don't keep their word, both of them. So here comes kind of the long-term peace should be negotiated with serious players, such as the European Union, such as Canada, Australia, Japan, all the coalition of the willing, which the British Prime Minister assembled in London 10 days ago. And there are a lot of follow-up in Europe as well on that front as well.
Those kind of European, the European talks is what I want to focus on next. And finally, we saw this coalition of the willing conference that took place, hosted by the UK. What do you make of future European involvement in this? America said they would be open to Europe being involved in talks later down the line as talks advance. Do you see this happening?
Well, yes. I think the coalition of the willing, the only actor in the world today that can help Ukraine and solve the problem with Russia. And it is strong. Even if you exclude United States from NATO, there are still 30 plus countries in not only those, we have also Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea. There are plenty of countries in the world support. 95 in the last voting in the General Assembly supported Ukraine, and only 18, including United States and some of the allies of United States, supporting Russia. So the global opinion is definitely on Ukraine, and the European Union and the coalition of the willing, adding those extra actors in Asia and Latin America, will obviously be the main negotiator of peace, exactly because of the unreliability of Trump. Trump will obviously put fanfares how big peacemaker he is, but every reasonable person in the world will understand that that's not the case.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Veselin Ivanov-Popovsky. We now move on to some more news updates. The conflict between Yemen's Houthis and the US has intensified following a series of US airstrikes on Houthi positions. In response, Houthi rebels have claimed another attack on a United States naval vessel, calling it retaliation for US strikes on Yemen. A Houthi spokesperson said that the fighters had launched 18 missile and a drone at the aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman and its accompanying warships. Updating an earlier death toll, Houthi Health Ministry spokesperson Anis al-Bahi posted on X that 53 people had been killed, including 5 children and 2 women, and that 98 people had been wounded. The US insists it will target Houthis until Yemeni group withdraws threat to Red Sea shipping. We are once again joined by Dr. Veselin Ivanov-Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean of Jindal Global Law School. Thank you very much for once again joining us. Going into these strikes from the Americans on the Houthis, what are the primary strategic goals from the United States in these airstrikes?
Well, certainly, Houthis are one of the worst terrorist organizations in the world, and it's a long strategy. It's not something that Donald Trump came up with yesterday. This is a long-term American foreign policy, counter-terrorism in many parts of the world. And it is kind of a continuation of what the previous administration did in limited strikes against Houthis, including, which, by the way, can a little bit go against what Donald Trump used to say. I'm the peacemaker, I'm the person who never started any war. There will be question marks, but we know Trump. Trump is usually making those statements, they have nothing in common with what he said yesterday and what he will say tomorrow. So those change of minds in Trump's mind are very often. But I would be very hopeful to see United States continuing commitments to counter-terrorist operations from the previous Joe Biden. So I'm very happy to see that commitments to global order, including in counterterrorism, continues. Obviously, this needs to be very specific and very limited, with sparing civilian lives, obviously, and not random and not producing extreme collateral damage.
Yes, Dr. Veselin, you called the Houthis then one of the worst terrorist organizations. Why are you calling them this?
Well, not me. It is United Nations in many resolutions, many statements made by the majority of the world leaders. They are fighting in a war which is totally illegal, supported by Iran, by the way. It's the kind of the Iranian proxies, and these also include Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, and other actors, non-state actors, that are considered to fight. Terrorism means indiscriminate fighting, not sparing any civilian lives, and that's how Houthi fight all over. There are plenty of evidence. It's not my judgment. It's a very global judgment. Houthis do fight indiscriminately, killing a lot of civilians.
Yes, I wanted to go on now. Obviously, you mentioned the civilian impact. There's been reports of women dying in these strikes by the US, children as well. How can the US reconcile the need to neutralize these Houthi threats, but with the moral imperative to minimize civilian impact and casualties?
Well, they should. I regret to see any civilian dead, and for that matter, I also would blame the US military that were not taking precautionary measures to limit to a minimum civilian life. So those strikes against terrorists should also be very specific and very careful as not to result in civilian lives. And that also would damage such action, counter-terrorist actions, if they produce excessive damage. Absolutely. I'm supporting the view that US military should be blamed if strikes on Houthis produce excessive civilian damage.
Yes, the Houthis have claimed to have attacked the USS Harry S. Truman on 2 occasions. What does this say about the group's military capabilities, and how might this change US calculations in that regard?
Yes, that's a dangerous, I would say, support from Iran comes often to Houthis, and for that matter, they have the capabilities to exercise those strikes, including on targets such as the US Navy. And for that matter, again, some pressure is necessary to exercise also on Iran to stop supporting its proxies, such as Houthis, such as Hezbollah, and such as Hamas. Definitely pressure on Iran, including diplomatic, economic sanctions, including, as we see now, sometimes necessary, proportionate military strikes.
Given the strategic importance of the Red Sea for global shipping, how might these continued hostilities affect maritime security and global trade routes?
Well, that's also part of Houthis' tactics. All terrorists would love to see distractions and disruptions of transportations, of shipments, and control over the Red Sea is important to ensure, as you said correctly, the international trade rules and exports and imports from all countries. And many countries in the region are very affected by the fight between Houthis and the government of Yemen including the support for the government of other international players. So the Red Sea is an important transportation route, and as soon as the conflict is mitigated and hopefully solved, that will be better for the region, better for the world.
Dr. Veselin, are there going to be any diplomatic initiatives to help de-escalate this conflict? And how do you think the US airstrikes impact potential avenues for negotiation, if any, with the Houthis?
Certainly, we don't see much diplomacy. I fully agree with the kind of the spirit of the question. We need to see more United Nations here, and I'm teaching United Nations studies, and I'm very disappointed, by the way, to see no action whatsoever coming from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, or any other parts of the United Nations on any of those discussions. For example, we earlier discussed the ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, and obviously United Nations would be the best organization to offer the monitoring of the contact line and on any demilitarized zone in the future. And the same in Gaza. There are a lot of talks about who should reconstruct Gaza. Would that be Donald Trump? Would that be some Arab countries? Again, where is United Nations? United Nations used to offer those services many times in the past, in Cambodia, in Timor-Leste, in Sierra Leone, in Yugoslavia, and in many other parts of the world. Where is, I'm asking, United Nations to offer its good services exactly for the situations which they did so many times in the past in terms of peacekeeping, in terms of monitoring, ceasefire, and so on.
Thank you very much for joining us. We now move to some more news updates. M23 rebels have accused the Democratic Republic of Congo's government, which has been fighting in the east of Congo, of trying to torpedo direct talks scheduled in Angola. A 5-member delegation is expected to leave for Luanda for dialogue at the request of Angolan authorities. Lawrence Kanyuka, a spokesperson for the AFC Rebel Alliance that includes the M23, said in a post on X, the conflict in the eastern Congo escalated in January when the Rwanda-backed rebels advanced and seized the strategic city of Goma, followed by Bukavu in February. The spokesperson for the M23 and the Congo River Alliance, a political military alliance of which the M23 is a member, accused the DRC government of using fighter jets and drones to bomb densely populated areas in recent days. Angola, which has acted as a mediator in the conflict, has called on a ceasefire starting Sunday at midnight, an appeal to which no party has responded. We are now joined by Mahmoud Mohamed, journalist located in Ghana. Thank you very much for joining us. Are these, Mahmoud, are these peace talks a step in the right direction? Do you have optimism for these?
Yes, based on the information on the ground, it is a step in the right direction, because this is what many people have been speaking about, and they actually wanted that negotiation, peace negotiation, to come off. But unfortunately, the president didn't actually want to have a peace talk with the M23 group, and so when he changed his mind, people are excited that this peace talk could bring something new to the people of DR Congo. And so if you speak to people on the ground, people who are worried about the situation, they are saying that this peace talk could bring an end to the conflict in DR Congo. And so even though the M23 leadership, which read some report on X by the spokesperson Lawrence, indicated that they have received an invite from Angola. They have not also indicated whether they would participate in this particular peace talk. So we are yet to know what would happen, what would be their statement, whether they would participate in the peace talk or not. And we're waiting to see what will happen on Tuesday.
Mahmoud, the significant update is, in regards to this is the fact that the DRC government is now willing to negotiate with the M23 rebels. What are the top priorities for each side in these talks?
Well, well, M23 made series of demands in the past, and one of them was to speak or to negotiate with the president directly. They wanted the president to negotiate with them directly. And so one of the reasons why some of them might be happy is the fact that the president has agreed to talk to them directly. To negotiate on what they think could be done to resolve the issue in DR Congo. And so we are looking at the fact that if the peace negotiation brings something good, we are sure that it will lead to a lot of benefits to the people of Congo, to the people of DR Congo, and to the M23 group. We know how they have advanced in some parts of DR Congo, and that has become a very worrying situation to the president, who now wants to have a talk with them. So a lot of things, we expect a lot of demands, during this negotiation, but for now, you wouldn't be able to know what kind of demands they would also put on the table before the president and other delegation who will be meeting on Tuesday. But we're expecting that the M23 group would make some certain demands during the negotiation, the peace negotiation.
Mahmoud, Angola is facilitating these negotiations. What's in it for them? Are they a suitable mediator?
Well, we from the information we've gathered is the fact that this negotiation is going to happen in Angola, and once it is happening outside DR Congo, we expect the leadership in Angola to also participate in other leadership in other parts of countries that share border with DR Congo, like Rwanda and the rest, to also be part of the negotiation process. And so hopefully there will be some diverse leadership, member of people coming from across the area to be able to ensure that, this particular conflict does not only affect DR Congo, but countries, that share border with DR Congo are actually experiencing some, challenges as well, because people would want to migrate. They would want to move to these countries, and this can even burden their economic, stability among others. So we're expecting a lot of people, very important, prominent people to be part of the negotiation to ensure that peace will return to DR Congo.
Mahmoud, this is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world right now. Thousands are fleeing the violence. What guarantees or structures will peace talks implement to protect these civilians? And if you could just talk about some of the humanitarian problems that the DRC is currently facing.
Yeah, so one of them is the fact that people would have to migrate, and when they are migrating, they are supposed to leave their homes, and where they are going to sleep will become very difficult. Food will become difficult, and even water will become difficult. When the world, when there was recently this month, there was a meeting in Rwanda where they were talking about primary health care, and that has been a very difficult situation in Africa because we've seen a lot of cases of diseases increasing across the continent, and one of the reasons is the fact that we've not been able to provide clean quality water to the people here in Africa. We've not been able to provide good quality nutritious food to the people here in Africa. We've not been able to provide very proper sanitation to the people. And so once there is conflict, you are likely to lose most of these things, especially water and food. And so when you lose water, when you lose food, and then when you lose your shelter, then it becomes a very big burden to the continent. And that is one of the issues that we are battling here in Africa. And so we are seeing a lot of people complaining about food, complaining about water, complaining even about healthcare. And so when you are stuck in a very difficult situation, you will not have access to healthcare. You will not have access to food. And so these are some of the issues that DR Congo is facing right now. And you would be expecting that mortality rate would increase, especially with women who are mostly affected by conflict. And so it's becoming a very difficult situation there. And these are the basic things that everybody would want to have in life. But now in DR Congo, it's becoming very difficult for the citizens of DR Congo to get these basic needs just because of a conflict.
Mahmoud, one final question. The SADC recently announced a phased withdrawal as well from the region. What impact will reduced presence of these external military presence have on stability and the negotiation process, do you think?
Well, we in the past few weeks ago, we were told about the impact, the negative impact these external forces brought to the people of DR Congo, and you had the M23 group also saying it. I mean, and the fact that the DR Congo president also indicated that these were a group that came to actually fight his people or fight his government, and so this has actually escalated issues in DR Congo. But we are looking at the fact that if this negotiation is going to talk about the fact that these external forces are not helping, if they are not helping, then if this peace negotiation is going to talk about how they have impacted the country negatively and why they should be sent out, they should be taken out of the country, then I mean, it is going to help the people of DR Congo. Once they agree that they have brought certain kind of consequences to the people, then it will be right for them to move out of the country. But I mean, like people have said, that these
I believe we've had some
external forces who are actually contributing will be able to settle. The peace negotiation would be able to bring some of these things, will be able to settle some of these things to ensure that people of DR Congo will have peace of mind in the coming months.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for joining us. Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.